Welcome to the webinar. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. Want to give time for people to get in. Feel a little bad for our colleagues up in Athens, Georgia. They had a heck of a storm last night and they don't have a whole lot of power. So they're working on getting that sorted out. But we're down in Tifton, the other UGA campus. Beautiful day yesterday, a little warm, a little muggy. Looks like we have a good mix of people joining the call today. If you want to enter into the chat, feel free to tell us where you're coming from, what organization you're part of. We always like to see who it is that attends these. Every once in a while, it does help structure where we go with some of the things we show. So if you want to let us know where you're at, chat's great for that. Throughout the presentation Rebecca is giving today on EDDMapS for small groups, there is the Q&A option down there on your menu. At any time, feel free to throw your questions and answers in there. We prefer that to the chat because that really forces us to have a list of the questions and then we answer all the questions. Works out well for everybody involved. Good to see we have some people from Florida today. We've got some Rhode Island. Don't get a whole lot of Rhode Island, but we love them. A little bit of Massachusetts, Texas, a little bit of Oregon. Nice mix. Connecticut. We must have done something good to get a lot of New England on here. And we have some Canadians. I do love the Canadians. Wonderful people. I never get to visit nearly enough.
We've had some cities and towns and townships and whatnot from the New England area in the last few years joining and working on projects.
And I've just been corrected. That was not a Canadian. That was the other side of Vancouver. It's what I get for assuming. Okay, well, we are at 11 o'clock. We like to respect your time. So for our topic today, Rebecca's going to talk about EDDMapS and some of the tools we have to enable small groups to do things.
Yeah, so today I am talking about the tools we have for small groups. Some of these tools I've talked about previously, and so this is just kind of like with the idea or flavor or whatever you want to call it, the framing of a small group and their needs. Hey, Ohio, we've been in talks with some of the groups from the Cleveland Metro Parks. So the first thing I wanna kind of cover is what is the composition of your small group. So we have a lot of different tools at a lot of different, let's say, user levels, or either coming from what amount of experience or training they have, or to the technological resources that are available to them. So we have the EDDMapS website, we have smartphone apps, and we have tools for each of those different things. The two main apps that we have for reporting, across, the US and Canada are EDDMapS and EDDMapS Pro. We do have some more regional apps or more focused apps, but those are kind of the two big ones that are going to be the most widely used. So with the EDDMapS app, we talk about that being more useful for the average user, the average reporter, the general public, people who are, just kind of recreationalists wandering around going, I think I've heard about this thing. I'm going to tell someone I found it. It's also going all the way up to kind of the trained volunteer, someone who is has been given some instruction, or it has some experience in identifying invasive species and maybe is part of like a Friends of group or something similar. Those types, from the average recreationalist through like your master gardeners, master naturalists, things like that. That's where the EDDMapS app is a really good option. The EDDMapS Pro app would be from, again, your kind of master gardener, master naturalist, trained volunteer through your professional. Both of these apps are free to use. So EDDMapS Pro, even though it's like, for professionals, it's just in terms of the amount of features that exist really for it. A lot of times professionals need more things associated with the tools they use. So the EDDMapS Pro app, it doesn't have a field guide in it compared to the EDDMapS app. You can download the data in EDDMapS Pro. So if you're going into really remote areas and you need to know what already exists in those areas, such as if you're going out to manage invasive species in those areas, that's where EDDMapS Pro comes into play. Currently, the EDDMapS Pro app is the one you can report into projects with. That feature is coming for the EDDMapS app. So I will be talking about projects in a little bit, because that's an increasingly important thing that these small groups are interested in using. So just kind of think about what your needs are, think about your group and what it's, what their trained abilities are and what kind of resources are available to them to identify, okay, should we be using the EDDMapS app? Should we be using the EDDMapS Pro app? We have a lot of resources available on the training page. So if you go to our website and you go to the training page, you can see, EDDMapS Pro, EDDMapS app training materials. We also have, so it's PowerPoints, PDFs. We also have EDDMapS Pro training videos, even going into iPhone and Android. The concept of projects is not covered in the training videos because it didn't exist when these training videos were made, but you can learn more about projects through some of the summit videos. I think, where is it? There's a summit video in here on projects. So I know we did it. It's in here somewhere. There it is. Okay, projects. So we also did an office hours on projects as well. So just to kind of get started on some of the specific things I wanted to go over, I'll start with projects since I've been talking about that. So if I go to I'm logged in. If I go to my EDDMapS, I land on what is my dashboard, and this is my testing demoing account. So you can see I don't have anything on here because I don't report using my testing and demo account. So on the left side is a menu option that exists within EDDMapS, my EDDMapS section. And you can see I've got my reports I can look at, bulk uploads. Right here in kind of the middle of the page there is projects. So if I click on that, I have three options. I can look at projects dashboards, I can create a project, or I can explore existing projects. So when you create a project, other people can see, okay, there's a Japanese knotweed project in the New England area. Well, I really don't like Japanese knotweed and I see it everywhere. So I'm going to see, what that project's about. That's where those explore projects come into play. If I click on dashboard, it's going to drop me on the EDDMapS website dashboard, because the EDDMapS is a project. And I can see the data from the last year. That's what these dates are showing me. From the last year, there have been over 7,000 records added to the project. These are reviewed records. I can see how many subjects have been reported, the total number of reporters, and the total number of users in this that are part of this project. I can see who the top reporters are, the most reported subjects, and infested area by species. So we can see, you know, there's a lot of Burmese python, spiny water flea, and so forth. So these are just some basic statistics that are available for each project. If I click on the projects dropdown, these are the projects that I am in some way a part of. I'm either an admin or a user in that project. So if I go to demo project, again, this is showing reviewed records. So these are the records that would be visible to the public. So the EDDMapS website, all those numbers were publicly available records statistics. I can see on the left, let me show you what it actually would look like as just a user in a project. So this is the example project, another one of the projects we show. I am just a participant in this project. I can see there's one record from Chuck that's been added. It's a Tree of Heaven record. And I can see that we've had one reporter. That is, in fact, the case. There are 8 people that are part of this project. I can see my records in this project. So I've got 5 records here. They're reviewed and not public to unreviewed. And I can interact with them, view them, edit them, delete the records. Those are the records that I can see. These are my records. I can contact the admins for this project. And in certain projects, you'll see other things depending on how the project was set up. If there are photo projects, if there are sites, different things like that. You can see here that I have, like I said, I have 5 records in here. Say I didn't want these records to be in this project. Another way to get records into and out of projects is to move them. So if I wanted these lightning records, okay, these lightning records are not supposed to be in the example project. I can select those and click move records. It tells me the projects that I'm part of. And I want to, let's say I want to move it to the demo project. If I click move, it's going to say, ah, yes, those 2 records were moved. And if I refresh this page, they're gone. Now, if I go to demo project, there are now 4 records in here that are my records. So if we wanted to instead create a project, I have these options. I can name my project. I can provide a description. I can say if there's a website associated with the project. I can say if the project's public. I can select who will be the admins. Now, the admins of a project will be able to edit information about the project. They'll be able to contact the participants of the project, and they'll be able to do. They'll be able to see data that is not normally publicly available. So they'll be able to see coordinates that are not publicly available. They'll be able to see the names of anonymous reporters of the records that are in. This is all records in the project. And so they get to see some additional information that is not publicly available. The participants in the project are notified when they're joining the project, when they're looking at information in the project, there's notifications that, you know, this is the case. I can select my geographic scope, and if I wanted to, I could limit the species in a project. So if I only care about the noxious weed list of Colorado, let's say, then I could just put those noxious weed species in the subject list, and only those species are allowed in this project. one of the big things I talk about with projects is it's a way to unite data, unite records that would be difficult otherwise. So if all you care about is the plant records in your county, you don't need to create a project for that. We have other ways for you to get that information. But if you're running a Japanese knotweed awareness campaign and you want people to report Japanese knotweed, having a project allows you to tease apart what records just came in because people are reporting Japanese knotweed anyway, compared to records that are coming in because they heard about your awareness campaign. That's where this kind of thing comes into play. Another thing is for grant reporting. So if you have people who got a grant, or you got a grant, you can keep that data together in the framework of a project. So that way you don't have to try to pick and choose and get data from other ways. So grant work, awareness campaigns, things like that, where it's the easiest way to unite data. And also you can get those project dashboards, so you get quick statistics about them. So once you create your project, then again, you can look at the dashboard, people can add records to it, things like that. So that's where projects really come into play. I mentioned earlier, as admins, you get additional access. So you can manage your project, manage your brand, manage your users, adding people, inviting people into the project. You can elevate people to project admins, and also you can contact them. So if you have 30, 40, 50 people in your project, you can select, okay, I want to contact my users, my project reporters, things like that. And then it'll send out an email to them. If you've added your information in this brand section, then it's got your logos and your signatures and things like that. That's what's highly recommended, so it looks like it's coming from something they're familiar with. So see, sorry, there's a in your Japanese knotweed example, how can you tease apart the difference between reports from the awareness campaign separately that normally come in? So that's where projects come into play. So if they're reporting into your project, then so if you have a Minnesota Japanese knotweed project, they have to know your project exists and elect to report into it. It's not that they're just reporting Japanese knotweed in Minnesota because they saw Japanese knotweed in Minnesota. That you, in your awareness campaign, you would say, hey, download this app and report into Japanese knotweed in Minnesota project. They have to elect to do that. The data doesn't just fall into there because that's your species and that's your scope. And we did it this way because because of those privacy protections. So if someone's anonymously reporting Japanese knotweed with the coordinates being private, on the website, it's going to say EDDMapS reporter Japanese knotweed somewhere in this county. If they're reporting that same record into your Japanese knotweed in Minnesota project, you as the admin will see it's Jane Smith reporting Japanese knotweed at exactly these coordinates. That's kind of one of the things that you have access to as a project admin. Again, when the person joins the project, they're notified, hey, these protections are no longer in place because you're reporting into this project, so the project admin will see this information. So if you just care about Japanese knotweed in Minnesota, that's where I'd talk about the advanced query tools. So if I go to the tools page and I go to advanced query tools, and let's if you want to know what all of these different fields mean and how you can use them, there's this advanced query tools walkthrough. I highly recommend you look at that, because that helps you narrow your results down to as close as possible to what you're interested in. So let's say I want to see Minnesota, and where's species? There it is. See if you have any Japanese knotweed in Minnesota. And we're going to click submit. You in fact do have Japanese knotweed in Minnesota. I'm so sorry. It's not a great one to have. So in this case, you get a little bit of information here. And again, on that advanced query tool walkthrough, it breaks down what these different criteria are and what they mean. So 964 locations with records. So you have 456 positive reports, 228 treated reports, 18 eradicated, and 167 negative locations for Japanese knotweed. So in this case, I did not need a project kit to get this information, but if I were running an awareness campaign and I wanted people to report Japanese knotweed, I don't know that I should include any of these records when I'm talking about the success of my campaign, because one, these already existed before the campaign ever started, but also if you still have 100 records a year coming in just because people are out there reporting Japanese knotweed, you can't be sure those are because of your awareness campaign. So having a project where people are reporting into, you can say, yes, this is the only way they would have been reporting into this project is because they were made aware of it through the awareness campaign. So the other things I wanted to talk about with regards to small groups. So a lot of times small groups are very they have a geographic scope, and they usually have some sort of parameters with regards to taxa. Either they have a specific list they're looking for, or they have specific taxa, like, oh, we are only focused on plants, or we are only focused on aquatics, or whatever. So in those cases, we're going to go back to my EDDMapS. And if we go to alerts here on the left, this is where I can say, I want to be notified. I want to get an email if something comes in that fits my parameters. That can be, so let's say, well, there's only two options there. And I'm going to say Georgia because that's where I am. And because I'm a small group, I'm going to just say in one particular county. And again, I can say, I want to know all the plants, or maybe I only care about aquatic plants because I'm part of a riverkeeper program or something similar. Or maybe, again, I just care about a very specific species or a small list of species. Another option here is new only. So maybe I care about plants, but only if it's the first report of that plant in my county. Because maybe I have an awareness campaign of, hey, these are the new things that came in, and I send out a newsletter about that. I can create this alert, and so now I can get an email once a day of all the records that have come in. That's the first report of that plant species in well, we need to add Georgia to there. So Joe, make a note of that. And it's Banks County, Georgia in the US. So thank you. So this way I get an email and I get notified that this has occurred. So again, this can be a very powerful tool for knowing what's coming in, so that your small group can respond to that particular instance. Projects are only run through EDDMapS Pro, not EDDMapS. So yes, so currently there's two ways to get records into a project. You can use EDDMapS Pro, and report directly as you're filling out the report form. Or you can move records from one project to another, as I mentioned, as I showed earlier with okay, I was in the example project and I moved records into the demo project. We are working on updating some of the other reporting options so that it's something you can do directly without having to move records. We're not, you know, the other way is, and it would be something you work on with us, is if you have, say you have a website that your volunteers or your small group or whatever uses, we do have the ability to work with your group to create a form, and the records that come in through that form, through your website, would go into a project as well. Now that's something done through a website. It's not another app that's being created, but that is another way, because we do have some groups we've worked with who that's the way we've gone, because they have people already using their website. And so that's another way that records could go into a project directly. So participants have to, so it's not downloading the project to EDDMapS Pro, it's just making sure that your projects are current on EDDMapS Pro. So you download EDDMapS Pro, and that's one of the things in the training materials. If I open that up again, so we have this EDDMapS Pro app daily checklist. So if we look at that real quick, these are the things that you might want to check potentially on a daily basis, just to make sure that you're as prepared to go out for the day as you can be. So like the My Species list, check your saved queries, your county list, and then again, create, update, join, leave projects. That's on there as well, so that you make sure that if you've joined any projects since the last time you went out, you have those as something you can report into. So going back to my list, so I did go through the advanced query tool. Again, you know, that's two ways that's useful. You have a data set you can download. Did I keep that up anywhere? I don't think I did. So you have a data set you can download and see those Japanese knotweed records in Minnesota. The other thing you can do is, as long as the data set is under, I think, 10,000 records, you can save the query. So if I go to my saved queries, do I have any? I do have some. So in this case, I've saved these queries. It's basically like saving a recipe. So I can go back, and if I click on this, it goes to the query results for that particular query. So in this case, these are all the species that I was interested in Tift County in Georgia. And this is the results. It's a little over 700 records. And these are the positive and treated results for those species in Tift County, Georgia. Having it as a saved query also means that I can download the data set in EDDMapS Pro, and then I can go out and do revisits to those locations, either just checking, are they still there, have they gotten smaller, bigger, whatever, or I can go out and treat those locations, and it keeps track of that in EDDMapS Pro. And again, we have a lot of resources on the training page to cover EDDMapS Pro. The last thing I'm going to talk about in a structured fashion here. This was something we launched at the EDDMapS Summit this year in April. So if I go to Tools, you'll see this link here, Species Status Report by Other Geographic Location. So if I click on that, I can say, all right, well, we're going to see in Georgia, that's not how you spell Georgia. And it starts coming up with entries. So let's say I want to see in Tift County, which is where we are. So we have 12 entries in Tift County. And these are public lands or similar. These are other geographic locations. So I can say, okay, U.S. Congressional District, the Georgia 8th. If I click on that, I can see all the records in that geographic location. So this is Congressional District 8. I can see what types of records they are, and I can download this list, and I can see, okay, there's silverleaf whitefly, corn earworm, Chinese privet, pecan nut case bearer, mimosa, Chinese tallow tree, and so forth. These are all the records that exist in this other geographic location. And I can say, okay, well, I don't care about negative and I don't care about eradicated. I just want to see what's actually there. So if I limit that, if I limit that, let's pull that, here we go. I can see, okay, some of these numbers are going to have changed. And I can download this as a CSV, Excel, PDF, or print it. I can screenshot the map. There's that option up there. I can also say, okay, well, I know that I have a list of what's in this area, but sometimes I care, okay, I want to know not just what's in this area, but what's within like a distance of it, because maybe that's, that's going to show me some things that are kind of knocking on my door of my geographic location. So let's say like within 10 miles, what's within 10 miles of this? And it's going to think, it's going to take a minute to think, because this is a little bit complicated of a shape. It's kind of a big shape too. So it's going to think for a minute, and then it'll update this table, and it'll change what's obviously going to be showing up on the map, because it'll include things outside that the 10, within 10 miles of the borders. That's taking a little bit longer than I'd like. And it failed. Let me pick a different shape, something a little smaller. So we'll pick Georgia again, and Tift County, and we'll pick Fullwood Park. All right, so that's shorter. And let's say 5 miles. So this is a park in our county, and I know there's some stuff in there because I've reported some of the things. And so it's starting to pop up some things outside of the park, you'll see there. And I lost the park. There it is. And is it done? It's done. So there we go. So within 5 miles of the park, it's showing there's a lot of stuff. So that means that any number of these things could show up in the park before too long. And so that can be really helpful to for your group to get an idea of, okay, we know what's in our area, but what should we be looking out for? What's like, coming soon? And so you can help get an idea of what you should be looking for with this type of tool. All of the things in the other geographic locations page here, so all the things that would show up, crush it, in this table are also available in the advanced query tools. So if I go back to advanced query tools and I say, okay, well, in Georgia, in Tift County, and then I go to other geographic locations, these are the same options I had there. So if you want more filtering options, you can come here. The only thing this page doesn't have is you can't use that buffer tool. With with this page, you'll get all of the records as a result if you want to download those. With the other page, you get that summary that this species and this number of records.
Can you go back over the buffer tool? Some people have some questions about how you get to it and whether or not you can do fractional mileage or something less than a mile.
All right, so I'm on the tools page. So you have this menu bar at the top, and then there's tools and training. And if you click on tools, this is where you get to this page. So here's species status report by other geographic location, which is right above the advanced query tools. So if I go click on that, I say, okay, it's automatically selected the United States as the country, but we do have Ontario and I believe Alberta options as well. You'd pick your state, you'd pick your, or province, you'd pick your county jurisdiction or county equivalent if you have independent cities like Virginia has. And then, so if I go to, let's say, let's click Florida, because Dexter asked the question, and then we'll pick Miami-Dade. And there's going to be a lot of options, and you'll see some of these have multiples. That's an artifact of the source of the data we got these layers from. So most of the US layers come from the USGS PAD file, the Protected Areas database. And so in some cases, it's the fact that there's pieces of that park or forest or whatever that were separate for some reason in the file, or in some cases, maybe they had them in that file twice. There are hundreds of thousands of these, so we haven't had a chance to go through and update or fix or merge or whatever needs to be done. So let's say we want Big Cypress National Preserve. So let's click on that. And so at the top here, we've got buffer distance in miles. We've got eradication status. We need to change that to infestation status, Chuck or Joe, because that's what we call it in other areas of the map of the website. So positive is I saw it, treated as I saw it, and performed some sort of management action. Eradicated, it's no longer there. Negative, it's not there, and it may or may not have ever been there. It's just negative is I looked for it and didn't find it. So in this case, we have Big Cypress National Preserve. And if we scroll down, here are the species and the number of reviewed reports showing up in Big Cypress National Preserve. And you can turn them on and off, and they'll turn on and off on the map here. And you can, like I said, you can download this table as a CSV, Excel, PDF, or print the table, and you can screenshot the map. So if you want this map to put in a report or something, you can screenshot it. And then the buffer distance in miles, the minimum distance we currently have is 5. We don't have 1 mile or less than 1 mile. So that's currently what we have.
There's nothing that says programmatically, there's nothing about the program that says we couldn't add other options there. So we'll take that feedback into account and
so I don't know if this is a live thing or if it's a cached thing. Do you know, Joe?
I will check. I believe it's live.
Okay.
Which may have been why we limited some of the options. We also wanted to keep people definitely an upper limit. If someone says, I want anything within 500 miles of here, or 1,000 miles, or the fun people that put in 3,000 miles. Well, that's kind of, that's a lot of data.
Yeah. So, so currently the minimum is 5, but that is something we can change. And this is something we have worked out with other groups. The concept for this page came from some work we did with the Army Corps of Engineers. They provided us their project areas, and they wanted to be able to see, you know, not just what was within their project area, but what was close to it as well. So that's where this tool was essentially born from, is that concept with the Army Corps of Engineers. So again, so this page, this can provide you that information about what is in and nearby a location. So again, we've got national preserves, national parks, forests, things like that. We're not going to have everything. I tried to show this to another group and we didn't have their state forest. So that's if we don't have your state protected public area or whatever it might be called in your state, that is something that we can add. Especially if it's something where it's like, we don't have any of this for some reason, any of this type in our state, you know, we can definitely add those. Oh, he was asking if it could be typed in. No, yeah, this is just a selector. It's not a live typing type thing. But again, something that's less than 5 miles would be a good option for like kind of small groups and small areas. So those were the main things that I kind of wanted to talk about with regards to the various tools we have and their usage for small groups and small scope projects. I'm happy to answer any additional questions, either about the things I talked about already or about other tools and features and whatnot that I might not have covered, and you know, any other questions you might have about EDDMapS. So this is a question about updating polygons that might not be correct. That is an issue. We know that in some cases, you know, the second you create something, the second you download something, the second you use something that someone else made, it's going to be incorrect because things change over time. So in a lot of cases, especially when you're talking about parks and forests and things like that, it's not uncommon for land to be added or land to be sold off. So that makes the location shape we have to be incorrect. So Joe, I think we talked about options for updating polygons, shape layers. We were talking about because we have something called the bad shape fix tool, which I use to imagine this, fix bad shapes. Just to kind of show you what that looks like, let me pull up this here. If I go to
also partially answer the question, we also talk back to the people that give us some of these data layers. Mm-hmm. While we love correcting data and having our own version of it, I always feel a little queasy about that because, well, we're not the authority that published that layer. It would be really great if their layer consolidated some of what's there so that we could actually refer to it and use it. So it gets to be a fun balancing act between how you get all that to play nice.
So just to kind of give you an idea, this is what the bad shape fix tool currently looks like. And this is one of the layers. So this is, I don't know the name of this layer. That's not provided to me here. I can go look it up. But our database is saying there's something wrong with this shape. And so this came from the PAD data set. And it's probably something having to do with like marine protected areas. That'd be my guess. But, you know, in this case, this is an invalid shape for some reason. this is the tool I currently have to fix it, and I can use QGIS or ArcGIS or something similar to help me figure out what's exactly wrong. But this is one of the interfaces I have, and I can put in different well-known text. So this is something that we had talked about for updating layers. And then we would run data through those layers through the layer after it's been fixed, so to speak. Explain how I turn a cluster of records into a polygon. There isn't, we don't have a way to take a number of records, and we don't have a way for us us on a routine basis, or for the public or for someone else to take, let's say, 5 records and make them into one. That's not a tool we have. What we have done in a couple of instances is when working with a state agency, and the people who collected the data for that state agency, over the years, they didn't have the concept of revisit, so they just collected points on top of points on top of points. And then when they started working with us and we had the concept of revisits, we worked with them on how for their data to have a distance threshold. And so anything that was within that distance for their data to make the oldest record the original record, and then subsequent records revisits. But again, this is something we did, I think, one time. And it was for that specific data set. We don't have a way to, we don't have an interface in the website to say, oh, no, this record should be a revisit of another record. That is something we've talked about. The other thing we've talked about is having a sort of like auto suggest that, hey, this record is the same species as this other very close by record. Should this be a revisit? But we don't have that feature in place. And it also comes down to, and this is something, again, we talked about, and the reason we were able to do it for that one specific agency is that sometimes even if a record is the same species and very close by another species, it makes sense for them to be 2 separate records because they're on 2 separate properties. And so the management of those 2 records would potentially be different. So you might be able to treat one of those records because there's someone there in charge of that area, in charge of that land. And so they're going to treat it, but the other nearby location might be on different property and they're never going to treat it. And so there are some things that we've had to talk about to see if that feature would be more helpful or more harmful, if that's a good way to say it. So the USGS Public Area Lands Database, we got it in, do you think it was like 19 or 20, something like that, Joe?
It's been a day. We'll go back and look at the file to make sure we know what year it's come out.
And
the one I see they have now was published 2022 and it's version 3. So
yeah, they're not updating it all the time. And we know that some of the shapes in that tool, that shape file, we'll just call it, that they got them quite a long time ago. So the other options we have, and this was something I talked about with this other group a couple of weeks ago, is trying to hunt down and source all these different files from different state agencies or national agencies and they might be more up to date. And replacing or updating the existing files, layers we have with those. That is definitely a job. It's a task. It would definitely be a task to hunt those down individually.
And PAD's not the only layers we have in there. We
Yeah.
work with any partners that has, say, I've got a data layer. Can we get it in there so that it's run against and we have it available? I frequently like to get as close as I can to the source of the people who actually deal with the area, because they will be the first one to look at where you put a layer on a map and go, that's not what our boundary looks like. Sometimes when you've got stuff that's worked up through several layers, it's like playing a game of telephone sometimes, and something just gets a little off. It happens. We're all human. So we work with all kinds of folks to make sure we've got good layers. The PAD layer has some great data in it. Is it perfect? I don't think anything's ever perfect.
So we had a question about the other geographic locations. So right now, this is the input that you can have for when you're going to get the information of what's in that particular layer or location. So no, you can't. It's just saying what's the country, state, county, and then you pick your layer. And then once you get to the next page, that's where you can turn things on and off.
Someone's asking if we could get polygons from other land managers for public lands. Would we be willing to use them? Sure. I'm never going to say no to an enhanced version of data. We'll probably do some comparison to make sure we know exactly what's changed and how we're looking at things differently. But if someone's got better, let's go. Let's make it happen. Within reason, because you know how grant funded programs go. Someone does drop, here's 100,000 layers I'd like to have added in and run it. Gonna take us a minute. But it's that steady progress towards the goal that makes it all happen.
And the other thing we've found interesting is, again, after we put in the pad layers, I mean, those shapes were apparently fine in ARC, which is where, we were looking at them first. But when we put them in our database, which is a SQL Server database, there were, I think, 8,000 layers that were considered invalid. We fixed some of those with some automated routines that Joe put together. But we still have several, I think, a few to several thousand layers that are still considered invalid for one reason or another.
And the whole invalid thing, lines of a polygon shouldn't cross. That's a problem. The orientation of the rings in a polygon or a multi-polygon matter, especially when you have donuts. And where things are kind of backwards, when some of our routines that run all the data through those layers runs it, if I've oriented a polygon backward, I've technically selected the entire world minus that polygon. We look at it and go, why is this 5-acre polygon intersecting 6 million records? Oh, because it's backward. So we've learned over the years of how these different things can sometimes pop up, and where we've done these checks to go, is this going to cause us a problem when this runs?
Yeah.
So, that's a fun dialogue that if you're a geek that just loves playing with well-known text and understanding orientation issues, well, for that conversation, probably drive up to Georgia and we'll have a few beers. But it's fun trying to work through these problems and find workable solutions that can do it at scale. We don't tend to be territorial on any of this. It's all, we're working together towards a common goal. how do we make this happen?
Yeah, and Dexter, yeah, we can talk about the natural areas database that you guys have. I don't know that we'd be able to update it quarterly, because running all of the data we have through a layer takes a lot of time. Because especially when you're talking about polygons, because that polygon that the reporter submits can intersect with quite a lot of layers once you get going.
But if you know what you've done a quarterly update, and we're only looking at 20, 30 layers, 100 layers out of 50,000 that have changed.
Mhm.
Now we're down to something far more manageable to run. And keep going. The way we're doing it, we're caching. Whenever we get a new data point, we're asking what layers does this fall through? Because what we found for at least how we're running our spatial analysis, if I try running all of that on the fly and not caching some of those answers, the server kind of gets a little constipated. It really is not a fan of doing a bunch of spatial comparisons on the fly, the way we're running it. And for most of the things we're looking at, the layer is the layer for a very long time. So happy to work with that.
Yeah. So Monica requiring at least one photo for infestation reports. Maybe absolutely required would be too limiting, but perhaps the user could have to dismiss adding a photo. So with the apps, I think it does prompt a photo if you haven't included one in the report before you try to save it. I think that is a pop-up it has.
With the web-based forms, we do have the ability to require it will not submit unless you send a picture, period. We have to turn that on. And for different groups where they say, I don't want to mess with a report that they didn't send a picture. Okay, we turn that on, they put it on their website and they use that in their campaign. Because there's a lot of things, especially for, brown marmorated stink bug. Oh, I swear I saw it. It was there. Joro spider. Oh yeah, I saw it and I smashed it. We want more than your word on it. You're a wonderful person, probably a great neighbor in your community, but we need to verify that this was actually what you were seeing.
And the thing we've run into is, in some cases, if it's a very high profile or high priority species, even without a photo, some people will want to investigate it. Just because, if they need to be out there and looking for, let's say, giant African snails, then, if someone reports that they saw it, they might send someone out even without a photo to investigate it, because there's a huge eradication campaign for it. And then in other cases, we've also worked with people who would be considered experts on this species, that species. And so even without a photo, if Rick Hobeck reports Asian longhorn beetle, we're going to trust that Rick Hobeck can identify Asian longhorn beetle, since I think he was the one who identified it in the US to begin with in the first, for the first reports that came in. So I think we've got time for maybe one more question if anybody has one.
While we're waiting for that to come in, the next office hours, you've got that up on the tools and training. It is a month from now.
So August 18th. Migrating an existing program to EDDMapS. So the concept of that was, we've worked with people in the past who were taking data on pen and paper or some other means, and then they wanted to migrate their data set and their future reporting over to EDDMapS. What did they do? How did they do it? What kinds of things did they encounter, either technologically or personnel wise, things like that? So it's possible we might have a guest presenter. We're going to see if we can get one from a group that went through this process, because that seems to be the best option, so that they can answer those firsthand questions of, you know, growing pains. But you can go to the training page and click on this link and sign up for that program. Sorry, not program, that webinar if you'd like. And we'll also, again, send out an email announcing it a week or two before it happens.
No more questions in the Q&A. Thank you all for attending another office hours. We love doing these. If you have things you wish we would talk about in the future, let us know. bugwood@uga.edu. Just drop that in the chat. Drop us a note. Let us know something you're like, I've always wondered, how do you do the spatial analysis in the background? All right, that one might be more for the geeks, but we're happy to talk about different parts of the system, or where someone has more interest. And with that, it's noon here on the East Coast. Everyone try to stay cool out there. Go have some lunch. We'll see you all later.
Bye.